Pretty much anytime I do a project involving plywood or even some hardwoods, I get questions like, where do you get your plywood from? I've now done 2 projects in a row using plywood, so the questions are building up. I have actually addressed this in the past on my second channel, link in the description below, but I thought I'd address it here. For plywood, actually for all sheet goods other than say a quarter sheet or something I need in a real hurry, as in within the next hour, I go to Maxi Plywood. I use Maxi Plywood for a few reasons. One, they are local. By local, I mean I can walk there. It's a bit of a hike, but I can still walk there within 35-40 minutes. Number 2, they are very friendly people. Number 3, their prices are on par with any other proper plywood supplier. Number 4, they have a fantastic range. So I'll go through some of the products of theirs that I use. So this is a piece of 18mm Crosscut plywood. I believe this is basswood. So it is a hardwood, but it's very light. This is much lighter than pine, and certainly much lighter than something like birch plywood. It's relatively inexpensive. I'm not going to go into all the prices, but we're talking about the $90 range for a sheet of this. I found it very stable. I've used it on my Crosscut Sled, I've used it on a few other projects, and I will be using it on my dining table sometime this year. I'm going to be making the Wood Whisperer gaming table, a few modifications of course, and for the substrate I'll probably use this for the veneered panels and for the gaming surface as well, because it is quite a stable ply, it's inexpensive and it's nice and lightweight. I also use that Crosscut plywood in the 6mm variation for drill bases. Again, it's nice and light, it's stronger and stiffer than pine, and at 6mm thickness it's about the same price as pine plywood, maybe $1 or $2 more. Now, of course, as any good plywood supplier would have, they have birch plywood. This is 12mm stuff. I don't tend to buy much birch as it is expensive. It is very good plywood, but it is expensive. Now, they don't just do plywood, they do other sheet goods as well. This is a piece of MDF which has plantation oak veneer on it. Now, plantation oak is Tasmanian oak or Victorian ash, depends on where in the world you are. So for some of Mum's furniture last year, the panels for that were made out of veneered MDF, and it is actually quite a nice veneer. It matches up very nicely. So I'll probably be using some of this type of material. I'm not sure if it'll be this year or next year, to make some speaker cabinets. This comes in a range of veneers that they can press onto it for you. So there is, off the top of my head, Jarrah, Blackbutt, Blackwood, Tassie oak, American oak, and I think there's also spotted gum as well. We've got 2 plywoods here, and one of them, the red, is a decorative plywood, but this black stuff is actually more of a utility plywood. It comes in 12 and 17mm, probably thicker as well, but this is the only 2 sizes I've used. It is very similar to this plywood, but it uses a thinner paper, so you can still see the texture. It's also sealed on the edges, because this is used in the concrete industry for creating concrete forms, hence why it's called form ply. It is a hardwood. I don't know if it is birch, I think it is. Plywood in the center, and then it has a layer of paper and then the phenolic resin over it. This stuff is great. For the price, it is really quite strong, very stiff, very stable, and it looks pretty good. You'll notice around the workshop I've used it on a few of my fixtures. Form ply only comes in black, so if that's the color you want, that's great. However, this is some decorative plywood. This is Maxi Film. This comes in red, black, grey, white, yellow, green, maybe other colors. So this is a birch core plywood with phenolic resin on either side. The main difference over the form ply is that the color is much more opaque. It's a much more solid color. It is a higher quality birch core. And I think the phenolic resin even might be a bit thicker than on the form ply. Both the form ply and the Maxi Film machine really, really well. Whether it's routing, cutting, drilling. You'll have a few issues with drilling through holes You just need to be careful, maybe drill a pilot hole, otherwise you can get a little bit of chip out. This is just an offcut that's been banging around the workshop, so the edges are a bit beat up on it. All right, onto the rest of the decorative plywood. These are new this year. It is a Koskisen, it's a Finnish company that they've partnered with, and this is Koskisen's range of Koski Decor phenolic or melamine coated decorative plywood. So these are similar to the Maxi Ply. Sorry, these are similar to the Maxi Film, but you can see that they're not quite as opaque. So the colour on the Koski Decor is from a water-based dye rather than a sheet of paper, sheet of coloured paper. So these are probably a little bit more subtle, or they perhaps fit in a little bit better and less contrast than the Maxi Film. I think they've both got their own uses depending on what you're building. Now these three here are actually more of a flooring product, like van fit outs, that sort of thing. Again, it is a birch core. On one side we've got this stippled texture film, I'm not sure what that is, but on the other side, I'm not sure how well this is going to come up on camera, we've got this real diamond pattern, and that's not just like a different colours, that is actually a physical texture there. It adds some grip when you're walking on it, but I think that would make some really interesting decorative panels. So this isn't a sponsored video. I shop at Maxi Ply because, as I said, they are local. Then discovered that they're actually pretty good people and have more range than I will ever use. I've just had so many questions that I sort of really want to address that as best I could for why I use them, what their range is, all of that. They do deliver nationally. I don't know what the prices for that is going to be for where you are. Shoot them an email, they can give you a price list and maybe a quote. They don't require you to be a trade customer. As far as I know, there's no minimum order, but perhaps if you're in Queensland and want one sheet of plywood and want it delivered, they might suggest getting multiple sheets so that you're cutting costs of delivery down. I don't know. Now, very little manufacturing of plywood is done in Australia, but this is one of the products that Maxi Ply make up themselves. This is known as Maxi Edge. I think this is fine line. They've got a whole bunch of different plywoods they use for it, but basically they cut it into strips and laminate it, sand it, make it nice and flat. So this can be used pretty much anywhere that regular timber could be used, but things like countertops look fantastic in them. So why do I have a piece of this? Well, I turn it into pen blanks. So I'll have a picture on the screen of what the final product looks like, but by cutting it on an angle like this, you get a really interesting effect when it's all said and done. It turns out, in my area at least, Bunnings supply or stock construction grade hardwood. So this would be used in house construction, and it comes in your standard by 45 sizes. By that I mean 90 by 45, 140 by 45, I think there is 180 and 240 by 45. So that would be the equivalent of a 2x system, so 2x4, 2x6, 2x8. Because I'm in Victoria, the species that is most commonly grown around here is Victorian ash. Now this is also known as Tasmanian oak. Technically there are some differences, but they are a collection of trees. Tasmanian oak has 3 of them, Victorian ash has 2 of them. Also known as mountain ash, swamp ash, messmate, stringy bark. There's a bunch of different names for it. Long and the short of it, it is the timber I was already using as hardwood, except it is construction grade. So by that I mean it's not perfect. So we can see here they've got some quite big flaws here. Some of the knots are quite large, but I can generally work around it. However, don't be fooled into thinking that it is straight. You'll still need to joint it because look, it's straighter than construction pine, but it's still not straight. So you're probably thinking, great, where can I get this? Well, there's good and bad news. If you're in Victoria and maybe New South Wales, you can probably get this. However, this is locally grown in lower New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania. As far as I know, it's not going to be in all stores. I'll put the fine line number in the description below. If you go onto Bunnings PowerPass website, which is the trade website, you do need an ABN for that. You should be able to find it there and maybe order it in, I'm not sure. But I know in South Australia it's not available. So what can you use? I don't know. You're going to have to find your own local supplier. I know what's in my area and that's about it. If you're after nicer timber, Bunnings doesn't stock nicer timber. Your options are places like WR Timbers, who are a local to me supplier. Getting a bit further out from me, there is Matthews Hardwoods, which are in Knoxfield and somewhere in New South Wales. In Burwood, there is American Hardwoods, which has cherry, walnut, oak, and some other stuff. So unfortunately, I can't really help with supplies in your area. Probably the final question I get from time to time is about slabs. The red gum slab coffee table, for example. Where do I get slabs? I got mine off eBay. It's just a local guy who had some that he was selling off. He milled them up himself. He doesn't have an online store. He occasionally lists them on eBay and that's it. You might try looking on eBay, Gumtree, calling up local suppliers like Matthews or American Hardwoods. The other option is to go to one of the woodworking shows. I know the one in Melbourne always has quite a few really big slabs available. I presume the other shows would be exactly the same, as they sort of do a circuit. Other than that, unfortunately I can't really help you because Australia is such a large place. What's local to me is, 1,000 kilometres away from you. But anyway, that should help some people with plywood because, as I said, Maxi Plywood deliver nationally and they have more plywood than you could possibly need. Thanks for watching.